Hello and welcome to Conversations regarding the 2015 North American Systemic Constellations Conference coming up in November. I'm Linda Comeau, and today my guest is Dr. John Dore, who is presenting on Saturday, November 14th from 2 to 5, Jung, Dreams, and the Knowing Field. Welcome, John.
Hi.
Hi. Okay, this sounds very interesting. I'm sure we're all sitting ready to hear about your talk. Give us some information, John, about the upcoming talk.
Well, the talk is Jung, Dreams, and the Knowing Field. So I combine Jungian theory and his major concepts using the methods of family constellations. So first in the workshop, I give a basic picture of the major concepts in Jungian theory, not at very great length, just ego and its personas, how we develop conflict and complexes arise as the ego represses material that it doesn't want to deal with into the unconscious mind. And then I deal with shadow, what Jung calls the true self, the capital S self, which is the center of all our consciousness, and it tries to balance the conscious ego mind, and it has a set of functions. Under shadow, the comparison from Jung's theory to constellations is that in psychoanalysis, we normally think of the shadow as all the repressed feelings that the ego doesn't want to deal with, stuffed down below what we call the repression barrier. But constellations show us that the shadow is also part of a family shadow. So we carry negative inheritance, as we know well, if we're entangled with somebody. But there are a wide array of beliefs and habits, even family feelings, all stored in the shadow. For example, we know that secrets are important there in the unconscious mind, but it's all manner of whatever has not been talked about by the family gets stored in the shadow part of the unconscious mind. Then I deal with how the essential self can work through shadow in guiding the ego. And then I show how the unconscious forces that Jung called archetypes, they're innate, universal, powerful forces that really drive most of human behavior. And so the self has to deal with pressure from the archetypes and celebrating the positive ones as well as kind of filtering the negative ones. I have the project that I do in my practice in Tucson is called Learning from Your Soul. So I have classes and workshops, and a lot of what I learn there I'll be presenting to constellators at our conference in San Diego. Basically, I put a chart up of the ego, the repression barrier, the shadow, and the necessity for working with one's shadow, unflattering feelings, feelings we never wanted to have. And there's various ways of getting at the shadow, activating it, which I have done in prior workshops at our national conference. But what I'm adding, and what I mean by learning from the soul, is the deepest part of our psyche, the very ground of our psychic life, our psychological life, comes from what we call soul. And soul really can't be explained. It's sort of like electricity and its source. And so I don't go along with any theological, religious definition of soul. It's really the deepest layer of human consciousness. Jung called the soul one of the archetypes. I'm suggesting that through dreams, fantasy, creative art, meditation, chanting, praying, all of those traditional methods yield results that are similar to what happens in the knowing field in the course of a family constellation. So I show the similarities among all those modes, what you get, how you allow unconscious information to come up to the surface to be entertained. As we all know from constellations, a client will have a sudden insight. That's when they ask for the help, a client gives permission for this unconscious material to come up. So in the workshop, after I do a brief teaching, it'll be 20, 30 minutes at most, and I'll answer whatever questions people have about that particular worldview. I'll give some examples. I didn't think it was appropriate to go into examples now, but at one point after the teaching, I will ask the group if anybody has a very big dream, extremely strong emotional dream that's very important to them, significant for them, and I will constellate the dream. So the dreamer will be the client, and they will choose somebody to represent themselves, and probably start out with somebody to represent their issues. I tend to begin constellations in a lot of silence so that no representative takes on a label that they're representing. So it's just the person who represents the issue at first doesn't know what the issue is. So we have the encounter between the client's representative and the issue representative, and they start the action. Then I find out from the client sitting next to me, pretty much in a low voice, they more or less whisper what they're concerned with, what's coming up, and then we start putting other representatives in the constellation. I often ask the person what they place their faith and their trust in. For example, what's the God of their understanding? God, Goddess, Earth, whatever they choose. We usually have a representative for that, so that that representative can give support to the client when they are in the field themselves. I also represent the client's shadow self, or what Eckhart Tolle called a pain body, and I'll get some information from the client on that. So I get a lot of information sitting next to the client while the constellation is going on. I'll ask about who passed over, issues of birth and death, and typically put a blanket or a sleeping bag on the floor. Usually one with a male, one with a female to start with, and then I invite the members to let their body move them. I should have included that I spend a lot of time on preparing my groups how to enter the field and let it happen, so to speak. Okay. So I will demonstrate that. It's a guided imagery. It includes an invocation of the ancestors, as I learned from Hellinger long ago, but it has more pieces to it, more ritual formats to help people really prepare themselves to stay grounded, stay in their body. Hellinger calls it be collected. I usually mean be with your breath, be with your body. And when I go around to representatives in the field, and it usually accrues more and more, because when I see something happening in the field or in the circle holding the energy of the field, I ask people what's coming up for them. So I do multiple little pods to do with, if someone says, well, I just realized I'm having trouble with my daughter, then we'll invite somebody to represent her daughter, and then the participant themselves, like the additional client, so to speak, will be brought into the field, and I'll set them up, as always, looking deeply into each other's eyes to find what comes up. And I basically go around the participants in the field, sort of in between the participants sitting in the circle and the representatives in the field. So I walk that circumference, and I check what's coming up for people, and then I ask what's coming up, what feeling is coming through. And I always have a goal to facilitate the person to go deeper and deeper into the feeling that's coming up. That's what's meant by learning from your soul, going deeper and deeper, allowing the negative shadow material to manifest, then appealing to the core self as a resource for resolving the issue, and then giving support to that self. So I separately represent their self with a capital S. And I have a poster board in the room, so they'll have an outline of the elements in Jungian theory, which will probably be represented at one point or another, depending on what happens. So That's how I get a lot of work done for a lot of participants. I do stress the preparation. So there's Jungian theory, how I prepare people, the rituals for invoking ancestors, and then I'll open it up to, if nobody has a big dream, I'll just say, well, we'll have a constellation. Who wants to do the work? And almost always, given the standard format of how I was trained in Germany, I think in terms of Jungian concepts. I'm a Jungian analyst, so I spend a lot of my time with my clients, meditating with them, for one thing, because insights can come from there, or their dreams. When they have a big dream, we always work through it. And I actually train people about how to incubate their dreams so that they will be more vivid and that they will be more memorable, and they will bring them into their session each week, whatever they get. But I take insights from meditation. This morning I was reading Jung on psyche and symbols, where he talks about we all have momentary flashes of fantasy, but we never pay attention to them, almost never. So I'm working currently with people who I can see that's going on, because I'm actually a master practitioner of neurolinguistic programming. So I'm watching the face, displaying affect, watching the eye gaze go to different patterns so I can tell when they're feeling a strong feeling or when they're having a fantasy kind of thing. So I combine all of that, both in the groups I do here in Tucson and in my private practice. And I will bring all that, it'll all kind of manifest as I facilitate the constellations in the workshop. Any questions?
No, not really.
That's the content. At the end, I am interested in showing some details in the different modalities, in the dream, in the energy field of the knowing field, insights from meditation, what happens in prayer, and so on. So those are the kinds of the specialties that I deal with. As a Jungian therapist, it's always a moral issue about people making very hard choices, and it's often a spiritual issue. There are kind of spiritual crises that come up for my clients. I don't, and more in private practice than in the group.
Yes.
So I don't expect much of that to happen during my workshop, but people may come to me afterwards, as is usual, and in the chatting, and they may want some private time, and I'm always available to hold it with the people, and always get an experiential method rather than the talking cure.
Right. Oops! I just knocked over my book and my phone. But before we go, I would like to ask you how you describe constellations to us.
Well, let me read the top parts of my poster board, and then you will stop me when you've had enough. So,
we're all interested in this, John.
So family constellations activate the healing power of the unconscious mind, which Jung called the core self. They release unconscious blocks that cause mental and physical pain. They reveal the family soul, which binds members in profound blood ties, extremely powerful emotional bonds. Constellations reveal our emotional inheritance, which I call the family love and the family shadow. Again, pretty Jungian at every turn. Constellations offer healing when pain is unresolved by other modes of treatment. So I ask people, if you have an emotional issue, did therapy help you resolve it? Medical issue, did the doctors help you with the medical situation? And so the variety of things that come up. Constellations show the family conscience, and the conscience of the family demands justice and balance across generations of people. So I have to talk to people about how the child heart in us loves the family no matter what happened, especially the parents, and that anybody, due to the blind love in their heart, can unconsciously become entangled with a relative. and people sometimes we suffer some symptom, but it's really a way we unconsciously identify with an ancestor or sacrifice for them or suffer for them or with them, hold the problem and suffer out of love. Then I help them understand how the knowing field settles the unfinished family business. That's what I say to people next. And then the hardest part for them is I show them that it is the ancestors, the energy of the ancestors that activate the knowing field that will guide us and bless us, provide wisdom and insight if we allow that to happen, which is why I spend so much time preparing people, preparing their conscious ego mind to allow different and strange and surprising material to come up inside of them. They learn later that it's actually by looking deeply into, their representative's eyes. So, and then I explain, if you come to a group, you'll take turn as a client, and other representatives will share will represent your family or represent your issues. And at first I don't go too much into the Jungian stuff with people at a health fair or psychic fair as we have here in Tucson. But I have another poster board showing this, actually the diagrams of Jungian theory, just the way I will when I present the workshop in San Diego.
That is fabulous. Really good answer, John. Thank you very much.
It's probably a long one.
That's okay. We're all learning. Many of us, myself, I'm relatively new. I've only been into it for a couple of years. This is very exciting. It'll be my first West Coast conference. Yeah, so I'm super excited to meet everyone. But yeah, thank you very much for your time. I really appreciate it. I look forward to meeting you at the conference.
Well, good. If you have time, come try the workshop.
I will.
And see what, and if you want to get work done, Jung has the most comprehensive theory of human behavior that I know of. So it's a very powerful tool and meeting it in the energy field is one of the great gifts of my lifetime, because Jungians are pretty intellectual folks and don't use a lot. I've always used experiential methods like holotropic breath work to invite unconscious material up, or shamanic journeying and so on. But the energy field, the knowing field, is the best tool I've had.
Well, thanks again. So John's workshop is Saturday the 14th from 2 to 5, Young Dreams and the Knowing Field. Thanks again, John.
You're welcome.